Okay, well, we're right at the top of the hour. Give folks a few more minutes to join. I don't know, Debbie, I just see you here. So I don't know if you're actually able to focus.
I am here.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Great. Um, yeah, I kind of feel like we're going to get into, we're probably not going to have that many people here. I haven't received any notes from folks saying they're planning to join. So it might just be us, but it's still value because what will happen is we'll have the meeting and then post the recording, and people will be able to review that recording. So that's good to have.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm going to give just one more minute, and then we can run through things, and we can talk about everything that's currently on the agenda and anything else we want to talk about related to LLCCOMMS. Yeah, hi, Miria and Warren. Welcome. We have an all-star set of folks here today, and thanks for coming, Laura, adding to our all-star roster. I was just saying to Debbie that we'll wait maybe one more minute and then we'll get started. I'm actually expecting this to be a small and mighty group, so we can, for the benefit of the recording and people who may be looking to catch up afterwards, we'll run through the agenda as planned, but we can take discussions on whatever topic we want to talk about. So, yeah, we'll wait one more minute. And I would encourage folks, if you're comfortable, to share video in the spirit of the IETF Tools team meeting. The idea is to make this as close to a around the table kind of conversation as possible. And so that would be great. If not, that's also fine. But yeah. Okay, well, we're 3 minutes after the scheduled start time of the meeting, so I'm going to just go ahead and kick things off. Welcome, everybody. Thanks to everybody who was able to make it here in person. And as I mentioned before, if you've been following along, we'll just run through the agenda as we usually have it, and then we can take whatever conversations we want to have. I will post in the notes, in the chat, a link to the notes. Let's do it that way. Yep, sorry. Here we go. Voila. Okay. It's there. And yeah, so my name's Greg Wood. I'm the Director of Communications and Operations for the IETF LLC. You'll see in the meeting agenda document, which will convert into the notes document, that the purpose of these meetings are to focus on LLC-related comms. So that is the sort of the operational level of comms work that we do at the LLC in support of the IETF and IAB and the entire IETF community ecosystem. Comms in this context really means the idea of marketing communications. And marketing communications are different from the other kinds of communications that the IETF generally concerns itself with. And welcome, Karsten. I see you joined. We're just kicking off. And the purpose of these calls is, yeah, like I said, to get people up to speed on what we're doing on the LLC comms activities. So with that said, I have put together this sort of very, very draft document, which is structured in hot topics that I for sure want to discuss, some FYIs, for things that just to provide general updates on. Yeah, those are just my ideas. So the very first thing I wanted to do is to say, is there anything else that people would like to cover? Questions? We can definitely we definitely have room in the agenda time to add any topics that you don't see yet covered, but would like to make sure to discuss today. And yeah, I am not planning to use the queue feature, so we're such a small group. I think people can just jump in. I will also always count to 6 when I ask a question like that. So if I get to 6 and nobody's spoken, I will just continue on. So I don't hear anybody, so we'll just continue. I wanted to, in the hot topics for discussion, I wanted to talk a little bit about journey map development. This has come up before, and Carsten has actually participated a long time ago now in a focus group for one of them. This effort has kind of been, it's one of those things that is important but non-urgent, so because there's never been a specific driver for it, and I mentioned it in the last LLCCOMMS meeting. We now have been talking about this for a while, and it feels like we have a couple of things coming together to actually start moving towards developing and sharing a little bit more broadly the user journeys that we've been talking about. So I wanted to just recap where we are, what the thinking is on those, and answer any questions about them. The first thing is just to talk about what a user journey is. So a user journey is really, it's a model for describing and understanding particular key paths through various processes that cut across time and also cut across channels. So in things like agile development, there's the idea of user story, which is usually focused on a particular UX or interaction model. And user journeys are different from that because they will cut across channels. So for example, it might invite, in comms terms, it might involve email and a website and an app and in-person interactions. So the idea is to capture all of those kinds of interactions and also the individual experience into a single place. The second thing to say about them is that one of the key things is to pull out really the important exemplars of user journeys. So you're not trying to capture it, to be impossible to capture all the kinds of interactions that all the kinds of users would have in with a company or an organization or a community. So you're really trying to pull out those ones that you think are key to the success of the organization or community or company. And the third thing to say about them is that they're really models informed by data, but they shouldn't be confused for actual individual experiences. Like they're not meant to be true to life descriptions of any particular one person's experience. And and then the idea there being is that if you think about them again as models that are useful but not true, that's really the way to think about them. So again, they are describing experiences across channels and time. They are not representative of all experiences, and even individually, they're not representative of anybody's particular individual experience. But they are useful for understanding, for example, where there are gaps or perhaps opportunities for improving that experience. So I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions about the model, because it's kind of important to set that stage. Okay, I did count to 6, and I did not count beyond 6. So we have 3 candidates for user journeys, and they are the potential participant, the internet draft author, and new working group chair. So we've been talking about these in various contexts, but we haven't yet brought them together into a user journey. The diagrams are usually called maps. And those are the three that we have sort of been pulling out. And there are a couple of questions I'll tee up right now, but then I'll show you what the example looks like to give you an idea of how these translate into the map diagram. The first one is, are these sort of, are there other ones that we should consider mapping out? Like, are there key journeys that individuals take through the IETF process that would be super helpful to understand where things are not working or we have opportunities for improvement? So, like, for example, one could be, you're a new AD, what do you do? Or something like that. The second one is if these are the right. The second question is if these are the right journeys to be focusing on. Are there sources of data that we should for sure consider? So, for example, in the ID author example, there was a survey of ID authors. We had a focus group, and we have ongoing information from the community surveys that we have every year. So, what are the sources of data that we should be considering? And the third question I'd have is, once we have models of, examples, drafts of these journeys, with whom would it be most useful to share? So this is an idea that the user journeys are models and should be iterated on as you get more information to inform them. And now I'm going to count to 6, and I'm also going to pop out. Hey, Drew, thanks for joining. We're just going through the journey map development. So I think this will still work. Yeah, it looks like it's still showing. So this is an example totally unrelated to the IETF, but it gives a really good example of what a user journey is about and how it can be useful. So this is a person looking to sign up for a healthcare provider, and it shows, for example, the questions that person has at the various points in the journey. It breaks up the journey into different phases, which is a common attribute of a lot of way of modeling these kinds of journeys. It talks about what the questions are that the individual taking the journey has. It shows kind of implicitly the modes of interaction. And so, like, at first they're in front of their computer doing research, and then they call for an appointment. Then they get a reminder on their phone. They have the in-person interaction and the various follow-ups. And then the real benefit here is that you can help identify what the pain points are that need to be addressed, or gaps, and the opportunities. So this is just a really simple example. There are a lot of different ways of doing this kind of diagramming. One of the common elements that isn't shown here is oftentimes there will be an emotional map for various phases of the journey. So, like, people are confused, or the person taking the journey is upset, or so that also informs the model. So so now I'm going to count to 6, and I'll stop here, and I'll go back. There's a link in the notes document, so people can open that on their own. And I'll just, those 3 questions I asked before, are these the right models? What are the sources of data? And how should we share the initial drafts once they're done? And I'll just pause and see if anybody wants to talk about any of that. I might count to beyond 6 for this because there's a lot of questions there, I didn't realize. Okay, well, this will still be here. If folks have questions, feel free to shoot me email or raise them on the admin discuss list is the right place to discuss this particular meeting at the moment. I'm happy to provide further information. Again, the next steps that I see taking place and the rough timeline for at least the first 2 steps are detailed below. I'm very hopeful to have at least 1, maybe 2 draft user journeys that'll include sort of the sources of data that we're drawing from, for one-to-one conversations around or during IETF 120 in July. So hopefully I'll be able to find a few of you and have some bar conversations or over beverage conversations about these. Yeah. Okay. Great. I think that brings us to the FYIs. By the way, Drew, I asked folks to share info or share any item that they would like to discuss that isn't currently on the agenda, and you could feel free to just drop that in the notes document directly. Happy to do that. Okay, well, so we're on to FYIs. So the first thing there are three there. The first thing I wanted to talk about was IETF.org updates. And the notes speak for themselves, so I'm not going to talk through them all. Just to say, again, as we mentioned last time, sort of the pace of updates is, we expect it to be much higher than it has been over the last several years, in part because we now have data to inform what needs to be updated. So, for example, IETF new IETF participants report that trying to understand the process is very sometimes difficult. So we're looking at the process document. I know Drew has worked on has worked on this, and there are a lot of efforts around trying to make the often very, very detailed and complex IETF process more understandable, especially to newcomers. And another area, as I mentioned here, is that the technology section, for example, is out of date. And I know, Warren, you've worked on things like keywords to help people try and find relevant work in the IETF related to technologies. So, yes, Warren, please go ahead. Just jump on in. We're informal here.
So just actually as a note, I have taken my previous keywords presentation from 2017, and I'm going to be presenting it at the upcoming IESG, IAB workshop thing, basically being like, this seems like a reasonable idea. We should still do this because it's been, 7 years and we haven't. That's all.
So that's really helpful. Thank you for sharing that. I have a question for you, though, if you don't mind, which is, what is your goal with the presentation, and what do you mean exactly by keywords? Are they something that would be in data tracker, or what do you see coming out of that?
Let me quickly see. So yeah, basically we have the keywords page, which you have, and yeah, I'm suggesting that it should be put into the data tracker, and I have a mock-up of how that would look. And so basically, maybe the existing page stays around as well, gets updated, but instead of it being, I suspect that people have no real context around this, so maybe I should back up a little bit. So the keywords thing was originally something which I started pushing in 2017, and it was a way for working group chairs and authors to tag their working group and documents with basically tags explaining what the subject is. I actually have the presentation. I could run it through it if people are sufficiently bored. And that seemed like it would be a reasonable idea, but we never really productionized it. The people who did use it thought it was really useful. A bunch of people at Google, I pointed them out, and they're like, this is great. At IETF 119 in Brisbane, a few people raised this same problem again. It's really hard to know what the IETF is working on and where. And so I'm suggesting that we should take what we started doing in 2017 and productionize it basically by putting it into the data tracker. The management of the tags and keywords should be in the data tracker. And then the actual tags should show up in data tracker as well as maybe on a web page. Did that make any sense, or did I just ramble for a while and nobody knows what the hell I'm on about?
It made sense to me, but maybe because I was part of the mischief before, so I kind of understand. I dropped a link to the web page that you mentioned into the.
I can also run through the presentation if anybody wants. It's like 6 minutes, but I don't think that you particularly are that excited by it. And you
Well,
have
I
better things
know
to
for
do.
sure that Laura and Warren and Miria and Drew will see the presentation next week. So if you want to, and myself, and so if you want to spoil their surprise, I'm happy to do that.
Whatever you like. I don't actually know if Drew will see it because I think it's during the IESG day, and I don't know if he's showing up for that. And Miria's already seen it many years ago.
Oh, right. Good point. Yeah, let's hold that as an idea. Thank you for the offer. We'll hold that as an idea at the in the AOB meeting. Okay, cool. Thank you, Warren. Great. Well, if there are further questions about www.itf.org updates, let me know. I know one of the things that is coming down the road is that, oh, Miria, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually, I'm still wondering how it can happen. Like how, so you rework the participation part. Is that deployed already, or is this to be deployed?
Some of it is deployed, some is to be deployed.
Okay.
I know you had worked on a document about bringing new work to the IETF, and so that is not yet.
I think that is actually deployed. At least Jay sent me a link a few days ago.
Yeah. So that is part of the revamp. Yeah.
But that was also my question. It's like, I mean, there is a whole bunch of work needed on the webpage. I think generally we should try, and I think that's what you're doing, we should try to reduce the content we have there, because there's a lot of duplication and it's really hard to find things, so making things more crisp and shorter and whatever will help. And that's probably enough effort on its own, but I'm wondering how we want to maintain the content and how we make sure we keep the content up to date and who should be involved in which parts of the website.
Yeah, that's for sure something that we're always talking with Roman about, and flagging things for the IETF chair that they might consider needing to take to the ISG overall for the www site anyway. Sorry, www.ietf.org site. So that's definitely something that we coordinate closely with the IETF folks on. Yeah. But you're exactly right. Keeping things streamlined and non-duplicative and easier to read. So one of the things that we've been focused on is using simple language and trying to use tools like Hemingway to help us keep things simple in English. The other thing I wanted to share is that, of course, there's an RFC that's about to be published about retiring the DAO. So making sure that we have one of the promises that that document makes or implies is having a easy to remember single point of entry for people who are looking to participate in the IETF. So it was always easy to say, go read the DAO of the IETF. Well, now that won't exist, so, or won't be maintained. So we need something equally easy to remember to point folks to. So yeah. Cool. Huh. I'm sorry. I just got noted that I was booted. So, but hopefully everybody else is still here. Collateral updates. Just we're finishing touches are being applied to the 2023 annual report. I will say that thanks to work by Debbie, the financials have been done, I think, probably not fast enough for her, but in record time as far as my experience. So I think those are very nearly like officially done, and will probably be announced separately. But the holdup here is actually related to this technologies bit, where we usually try to have a technology feature. So I think the first year we did one of these annual reports is WebRTC because of pandemic and things like that. and last year it was MLS because there seemed to be a lot of energy around that. So figuring what that is and trying to get people to help contribute to both identifying and helping to write the content for it has been sort of the bottleneck there. And relatedly, we are trying to come up with technology and industry-specific briefing papers, and by that I mean like one-pagers, to relate what the IETF is doing to stuff that's going on in the industry or in a particular industry. So like one idea has been to use work in L4S as it relates to gaming, because there's a lot of interest in the gaming industry, like in Steam and other kinds of things, use L4S to improve gaming experiences. So, but getting the people who are actually finding the folks to translate the actual work into technically correct but still understandable by non-technologists language is actually quite difficult. That's a pretty specialized skill. So if you know of any good writers who might fit that bill, please send them my way. I've been talking to 3 or 4, and they're either not a good fit, or the ones that are good are so busy that they aren't available. So yeah, seems like a growth industry, if you ask me. Any other questions about collateral? Okay. Last bit is meeting promotion. So as been mentioned a few times, we're now actually working into doing promoting meetings more than one meeting in advance, which had been the previous pattern. We've already started to work with folks around 122 Bangkok and 121 Dublin. The other thing I'll say is that for 120, we've been reaching to new communities. So there's been we have a local contact to help us do outreach around the hackathon. In particular, there's a project about the thread protocol, which Stuart Cheshire and his colleague presented at the last IEB Open meeting, and they're having a hackathon project at 120 or in Vancouver. So we're trying to attract interest from folks nearby to join that, and also in academic outreach, we've been working with someone who's very knowledgeable about the local university programs. Universities or schools are out of session mostly, but there are things, I forget what they call them, but they're basically clubs or societies that are still active throughout the summer in Vancouver. So we've been reaching out to them to see if we can get some university students to get involved in or interested in the IETF and the hackathon. So general point being, we're doing more in advance and trying to reach more broadly to get interest in IETF meetings. Okay, I counted to 6. Yeah, and so now the open discussion just basically, I wanted to start with a question. Is there anything else that folks would suggest? And again, don't have to suggest now, but to make these conversations more visible to the IETF community, or are there particular pieces of the community that you think ought to be involved that aren't, and that we could do a better job of reaching out to in a different way? Yeah. So ideas for that always welcome. Feel free to send me email directly or post them to the admin discuss list. And then we have 2 other businesses. One is, oh yeah, can you hear me? I might be fading. This is, I think, my 4th meeting of the day, so I will try to speak up. Is this better? Can you hear me okay now?
I think it's actually just like bandwidth or something. I don't think it's you.
Oh, actually, I think I do know what it is. It's chopping, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on, just a second. Sorry.
Yeah, but for me, Warren was shopping as well, so it's not
For
clear.
me,
Maybe it's,
you're chopping now too.
yeah, it's a meat echo problem, I think.
Yeah, Drew looks fine.
Testing,
how's
testing.
it? Oh, not the biggest microphone, that's why.
Maybe it isn't me. Anyway, whatever.
Can you hear me better now? Has that helped? No, not at all. Interesting.
No, it's
Might
all the
actually
audio
be
that's
echo.
broken, so it's a meat echo problem, I think. But Miria is perfect, thank you.
Perfect. That is not good. Hold on here. Select my devices. Yeah, they all look correct. Not ideal. Well, I apologize. Yeah. Well, I think we're almost done, at least for my talking. So, meeting during IETF 120 in Vancouver. I think in the past we've done side meeting, and I think, yeah, that's right. It's just we have to play telephone to get everybody all the information. So pick your buddy and pass it along. Okay, so there have been suggestions about doing a different approach to scheduling this meeting, but unless folks feel strongly about it, I think I'm going to stick to the side meeting model and hope for the best. So if, again, don't have to, yeah, it's definitely my fault. If folks feel strongly or think about it and say, no, we should definitely do something different, let me know. But otherwise, we'll do a side meeting. I think there's still 24 hours before the announced agenda gets sent out.
Sorry, I was so much concentrating on the audio. Did you say in-person side meeting at the next meeting?
Yeah, in person
Yes.
with remote participation.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that sounds good, yes.
Did we do one last time? Am I forgetting? Or is this the first time we will do it?
I think you're right. We did not do one last time in Brazil, so this will be you're right. I'm thinking about something else. So yeah. I think we skipped it because of maybe time zone. I can't remember. It's behind. So okay, so we'll go for side meeting. Is there anything else anybody wants to cover? I am looking forward to Warren's 6-minute presentation on keywords. So this is your 30-second warning, Warren, to get all that ready.
In this case, I actually drop off. I've seen this already. I might see it again. And I have some more stuff to do, unfortunately.
Thank you very much, Mary, for joining, taking the time. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye.
Okay, Warren, I think you're up. I'm gonna mute. But you are muted for me, Warren.
Yeah, I can't hear you, Warren.
Can you mime the presentation, Warren? Can you just mime it for us?
Is that what you were print out that you were looking for?
I think
Get laminated and keep it always.
that last bullet is applicable.
Who created this internet?
Really, I was talking to an old timer the other day about the internet that they were involved in, like in the early 80s, and I said, well, you're the one to blame because you should have better.
Nothing ever works.
Can you hear me now?
Yay!
Yay! So what I don't know is with this presentation tool thing, it wants to go full screen. And I don't know if I can present that. So instead, we will just try this other solution, which probably won't work. Ask to share screen. You need to click some button somewhere. I've never done
and
that.
I
Training.
approve it one. Yes. Oh, I see. Okay, there we go.
You want to share screen? Accept, and I will share this. So I'm not going to do full screen because that would probably just end badly. Actually, let's humor me and we'll see if this does work. Oh, maybe it does work. Alrighty, so this is basically a presentation which I had done in the ISGN formal in 2017, and I have updated it for now because I think it's still a real problem. So basically, what is this supposed to do? This is supposed to help solve the problem of people saying, what's the IETF doing related to, and insert your favorite buzzword here. In 2017, it was network slicing. Now I think it's AI or something equally entertaining.
Yeah. And
actually, we had this sort of question happen at the plenary in Brisbane, where Kishore stood up and said, I work in a bunch of different SDOs, and they would like to be able to reference our document or be able to reference IETF documents. But it's really hard to know what the latest RFC is, or which particular RFCs are related to which area. I think the problem is actually larger than that. It's not just which RFCs are related to stuff, but even more so, what internet drafts are people working on, and which particular areas and working groups are doing what.
I have a question for you, Warren. Do you want comments and questions along the way, or would you prefer to have them at the end?
I think along the way is good.
Okay, so I want to add to your point about it's not just RFCs. In the context of trying to find where to do work, people who are new to the IETF want to know where you're talking about X. And in a lot of our materials, we say the first thing to do is to find a working group that, or one or two, but not more, that you're interested in. But it's very, very difficult to understand which working group, aside from area grouping, which working group is really working on this, because we don't have these kinds of keywords. So you have to look through the charters of all the working groups to figure it out.
Yeah, and also working groups are called things like sedate, and you're like, yeah, that's an obvious thing for, But yes, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, you're exactly the point. Like, you can't even go by the names. You have to go by the charters.
Okay. So yeah, this isn't only newcomers. There's also people like David Lamparter, who's been participating for a while, who says it's unnecessarily difficult to find the set of RFCs relevant to a topic. And in both of these cases, the IESG sort of agreed with the comments. So let's see if we can do a little better. So what I think would be better is we build a set of tags which we can assign to working groups and to drafts. And when I say tags, these are basically just keywords. And what the hell do I mean by keywords? Well, when you finally get your internet draft published, one of the last things that the RFC editor does is they send you an email saying, what all keywords would you like us to attach to your document? And many RFCs have keywords, but they're fairly meaningless. And nobody can actually find these keywords. It's very unclear where they actually end up. Eventually, I found them somewhere in the RFC editor site, but like many people don't know they exist. But seeing as we do now know that they exist, what do they look like? Here is a word cloud. Keep in mind, I did this in 2017 when word clouds were cool. And the keywords currently on on published RFCs are things like protocol or internet, or in this particular case, 47. These aren't really helpful. And again, these only show up at the very end and are attached to RFCs, and nobody can really find them. So I think we should instead have tags, and they should be attached to drafts. And these tags should be more meaningful. So basically, a much smaller, somewhat curated list. And they should also be searchable and display in a more useful thing. So is this idea worth pursuing? I thought it was in 2017, and we tried slightly. I ended up creating a sort of proof of concept spreadsheet where I made this Google Sheet thing and I listed all of the working groups, and I sent email to working group chairs saying, please find this spreadsheet and find your working group and list a bunch of sort of terms or words which are related. And then we will use this to make a pretty page on the IETF website. So I wrote something which took this spreadsheet, which again was chairs filling in words that they think are sort of related to their working group. And we made this page, which I stuck on my own site, and then Greg nicely put it on the IETF website. And it contains a bunch of things. Let me go back a thing, like autonomic networking is being done in the animal working group. BGP is being done in Grow and CyderOps and IDR. Authentications, Kitten, Emu, Ace, things like that. Basically places for people to be able to look and find where the work is happening. This was done very much just as a proof of concept. And obviously I didn't bother keeping up and chasing working group chairs, so it's wildly out of date. But ideally, I think we'd do something like this and have a smaller sort of curated list, and also have these things show up in the data tracker. Oh, hey, this is the slide I should have been talking to. Basically, we make a set of default tags which get assigned to working groups. So for example, everything in DNSOP is about DNS. Chairs can come up with other tags that they can apply to documents, and we should have sort of a master list. And ideally there'd be some tooling, and then it shows up in the data tracker, and here's a sort of mock-up. This would be something from, for example, the DNSOP working group. And so all of the drafts in DNSOP would be tagged with, for example, DNS. The working group ones I've sort of thought in a lighter color. And then chairs can apply more general tags. So for example, Alt-TLD was about special use names and policy stuff. And A name is about DNS and redirects and C names. And also, the A name document actually had an implementation. So I think it would be useful for there to be sort of well-known tags that are things like implemented. And again, I have this in a different color because I think this is like a IETF wide one or something similar. So basically, I think this was an issue in 2017. And back then I was super excited to work on it. And then I got sidetracked. But I think it's still an issue now. I also think that this is a problem where we can easily make a large difference for both current participants and also for newcomers. And it should be fairly easy to do. Basically, we come up with a list of sort of well-known common words, like implemented, I think, is a good example, or, you know, this is deployed or updated. And then we ask the tools team to come up with a way that working group chairs can take this list of tags and assign them to documents and have their own list as well for their working group. And I think that that is basically it.
Warren, in your mind, when I remember when I filled it up, I was thinking that these keywords are for working group. And I kind of picked keywords which apply much more broadly at the working group stage. But right now, what you're presenting, especially at the last part, you are thinking, oh, all the documents of this working group gets those tags.
Sorry, let me go back one. I'm thinking that for certain working groups, like for example, everything in DNSOP would get the DNS tag automatically. And then the other ones would be individual ones applied by the chairs to the working group. Sorry, did that answer your question? Did I answer a different question?
No, yeah, this is right. I understand what you're trying to do. I'm just worried that this might not work for all the working groups. Like for instance, some working groups, what happens is they work on 3 technologies.
Yep.
And right now in the keyword case, what we have done is we thought that this is about like, I want you to find my working group. So I've put all the 3 tags. Now what happens is if all the documents gets the 3 tags, because I'm working on 3 technologies, that's going to be super confusing. Okay. So it works for DNS because DNS is general. But if I'm working on 3 different things, then that breaks down a little bit. So we have to just tweak it a little bit. Say something that like, we can't just blindly do it, but like tag type or something, we would need to know that something which is more global versus something which isn't. And they were two different use cases as such, because to me, initial idea of the keywords was finding the working group. And I think we need to differentiate the keywords of finding the working group and finding the document. They should be two different set of.
Probably, yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. Any other comments?
Just a question. You mentioned the work that the RPC does at the moment. Have you spoken to them recently about their thinking on keywords?
No, I spoke to them in 2017, and they, at that time, sort of largely were like, yeah, there are these things, and we apply to them, and we don't really know what anybody ever does with them because we stick it in the XML, and then who knows.
You
probably
might want to talk to them about. I think that their thinking has evolved a little bit on that. At least I didn't talk to them in 2017, but I know this topic has come up recently. And in any case, since if I understand it correctly, the idea is to apply the keywords consistently to RFCs as well as stuff that are not RFCs. It would be good to see where they are on this.
So I was thinking, hopefully, the list of keywords would be useful. So maybe it's not they would automatically get applied to RFCs, but there would be a good sort of starting point. So maybe when the RFC editor gets it, they're like, here's some list of keywords you had. Do you want to keep those? Do you want other ones? Or, you know, maybe just the authors, when the RFC editor says, what keywords would you like? The authors could go, oh, there were these ones. I'll just copy them over. But yeah, I should chat with the RFC editor. That's a good point.
So I know I'm just finance and I know nothing about all the details that you guys do. And I'm very honored to even be around you guys. But anyway, Greg had sent a link to the working group keywords from the website. So I quickly was looking at that when you had that last slide where you showed the example. And I noticed that there's some of the, and I don't know if those are real examples. If they are, there's some keywords on those that aren't on the list of key group keywords on the internet. I mean, on the website. Is it going to be a problem keeping up a master list?
So, I mean, this list was created back in 2017. So there are probably many of them are out of date. I think that we would likely have two sort of lists. One list being well-known tags that the IESG or someone has come up with. And the reason that I think we need sort of a curated list is if we look at the, wherever it's gone, demo one I had, right, there's many different variations on a theme. When we had the spreadsheet, there were people doing like things that were wildly specific. And then there were also like 47 different spellings of characterization or similar. I think we'd want like, you know, a curated list that people can select from. And then they can also have their own working group specific ones. And I mean, if a keyword becomes, we decide is not useful, we can just scrub it from the list. It's not that it has to exist still. I think they should be relatively dynamic and people can just add the ones that seem useful and ignore ones that they don't. But yeah, good question. Thank you. Cool. I don't know if this is related, in a possibly very closely related thing. I had started doing something similar in DNSOP, where we don't have it in the data tracker, but the DNSOP chairs found this to be helpful. And so this we just took a list of all of the drafts, and we had started putting more just status tags on things, which is for the chairs and working group participants to be able to sort of track what state the document is in. This isn't really the same thing, but I think they might also be useful things for us to consider. Reason I'm kind of mentioning this is these specific tags which we had applied to some documents are actually referencing things in the charter. So for example, our charter says we can work on DNSOP practices and maintenance. So we had tagged specific documents with bits from the charter. But again, this is more sort of, I figured I would point at this as well. So this is a combination of some tags for the chairs to be able to remember which particular things a document is related to, and also the status. But that's a larger topic.
Yeah, thanks to Drew for the pointer in the chat to the PC work. There's a lot of interest in this, Warren, so I'll be interested to see what the conversation comes out next week. Just for fun, I asked ChatGPT what the important RFCs related to DNS were, and the answer was quite long. So, and probably entirely.
Does it mention 1034 and 1035?
Does. They're
Oh, wow.
the first. The last one is 8482. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for sharing or previewing the presentation that you're going to do next week. Super interesting. Is there anything else people want to talk about before we? No? Okay, I counted to 6 again. Thanks again to everybody for joining. Thank you, Karsten, very much for coming along. And I look forward to seeing Drew and Warren next week. And hopefully everybody in Vancouver. And I'll send out, I'm going to go through and clean out the notes, clean up the notes, and then send those out along with a link to the recording once that's posted to the admin discuss list, which is the discussion list for this group. So thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See ya.